Okay, I think we're ready to get started. So I might just say a word of Fáilte and welcome to everybody who's joining us tonight. I'm going to attempt some Ukrainian, so I'd say Laskavo prosimo na nasz webinar, and that'll be the last time you'll probably hear me saying anything in Ukrainian until the end of the call. You're very welcome. My name is Brian Looney. I'm Head of Digital with Kerry County Council, and on behalf of the Kerry Community Response Forum, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this evening's information briefing for people who are interested or already involved in hosting Ukrainian families. So you're very welcome, as I said, and I'm just going to run through some housekeeping slides, if that's okay, so everybody knows what's going on, and I'll cover what's on our agenda for later on. So hopefully you'll be able to see my screen. The first thing I'd say is the only people who can be seen this evening are the presenters and the panelists. So if you're at home, you don't have to worry about what's going on in the background. Attendees can't be seen by anyone. You can't be heard, so by default, members of the public are muted, and they'll remain muted during the webinar unless you're invited in to maybe unmute later on to ask a question. If you want to ask a question, use the chat function. So if something comes up in the course of the presentations or you have a question that hasn't been addressed, feel free to type it into the chat function and we'll try and pick that up, and I'll direct that question maybe to the most suitable agency. And we've a wide variety of stakeholders on the webinar tonight, so I'm sure you'll be able to get an answer. And if we can't answer the question tonight, don't worry, we have everybody's email address and we'll be able to write out to everybody afterwards with the questions that were asked and the answers that were given, even if we need to go and do a little bit more digging to get you those answers. Again, if you are asking a question, please try to minimise any family circumstances or any particular questions you have. We don't need to know necessarily where you live, how many people are in your household. So keep the personal information to a minimum, and I think that'll help things run more smoothly. The session will be recorded, so this information session will be available on Kerry County Council's social media platform. So we put it up on our YouTube channel once we've done a little bit of checking and making sure everything's all right. We publish it as quickly as possible. So if you do need to leave and maybe tune back in later on, that's absolutely fine too. In terms of any feedback you have in relation to the running of this webinar, please do get in contact with us afterwards. We always look to find ways that we can improve the webinars and improve our engagement with the public. So in terms of the agenda we have tonight, once this housekeeping business is finished, we'll be handing over to Niamh O'Sullivan from Kerry County Council, but she's representing the Community Response Forum just in words of welcome tonight. Our first speaker is Elisa Babkina, who'll be talking to us about Ukrainian culture and some of the cultural differences between Irish culture and lifestyle and Ukrainian culture and lifestyle. Then we'll have a speaker from the Irish Red Cross, who's Olga, and she'll be talking about some expectations when you are involved in hosting Ukrainian refugees. There'll then be a speaker from Turk from the Tralee International Resource Centre, Mary Carroll, and she'll be talking to us about the resources and the supports that are available to Ukrainian refugees who are here in Kerry. And finally, we'll have an open forum effectively, so we'll be inviting you, the public, to ask any questions that you have for the wide variety of forum members and agencies and the speakers. So there will be a good opportunity for you to engage with us and to ask us questions. And to those people who've already submitted questions, thank you very much for that. You've given me a head start, and I look forward to assigning those questions out to the panelists later on. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Niamh O'Sullivan, and Niamh is going to do our introductions. So over to you, Niamh.
Thanks, Brian. On behalf of the Kerry Community Response Forum, I'd firstly like to welcome you all to this evening's webinar, which, as Brian has mentioned, has been organised specifically by the Kerry Community Response Forum to provide information and assistance to households hosting Ukrainian refugees and also households that might be considering becoming a host. Just to tell you a little bit about the Community Response Forum, it's an interagency forum that was established in Kerry to coordinate the community-led response in the provision of assistance and support to Ukrainian refugees as they are accommodated around the county. The membership of the forum is modelled largely on a similar group which worked very efficiently to coordinate the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. The response forum in Kerry is also supported by local area response teams. I think we have 5 established now across the county. And these are supported by the local development companies in Kerry and organisations working with refugees in the county, including the Killarney Immigrant Support Centre, CASI, and the Tralee International Resource Centre, and they're also supported by our family resource centres across the county as well. So the local area response team also comprise of local stakeholders and service providers who can help develop and deliver the appropriate supports required to respond to the needs of the Ukrainian people as they arrive into the county. So the purpose of tonight's webinar is to allow you to, and for us to share information with you. You'll be given an opportunity, as Brian said, to ask questions through the chat function, and you'll be able to find out more about the services and supports available in Kerry, so we can all help the Ukrainian refugees arriving in our county to integrate into our community. So Brian has already mentioned the speakers tonight. We've Alicia Babkina from NASC, the Migrant and Refugee Rights Centre, who's going to talk to us about the Ukrainian culture. Then we have Olga Lacey from the Irish Red Cross, who will outline what to expect and how to prepare as a host. And finally, Mary Carroll from the Tralee International Resource Centre will outline some of the supports available to the Ukrainian refugees in Kerry. And they're doing fantastic work on the ground as part of the local area response teams. All of our speakers will also form part of our panel this evening and will be joined by representatives from the local development sector, the HSE, CASI in Killarney, the Kerry Education and Training Board and the Department of Social Protection. So we'll do our best, as Brian said, to answer the questions that you may have this evening. If not, we do intend to develop a frequently asked question document, which we will share with you in the coming weeks. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker tonight, Elisa Bakina. She's from NASC, the Migrant and Refugee Rights Centre. Elisa was born and actually raised in Kiev in Ukraine. At the age of 17, she moved to Poland to obtain an MA degree in international relations with a focus on peace and reconciliation studies. She's a keen interest in human rights and arts and volunteered to numerous NGOs in Ukraine. Currently, she is working as a community sponsorship officer at NASC. So it gives me great pleasure to welcome Elisa Babkina on behalf of the Kerry Community Response Forum. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you hear me well. Just give me 1 second. I'll open up my presentation. So hello, everyone, again. I am happy to present a little bit of Ukrainian culture for you today, just so you get familiar with what it is, who we are. I am myself from Ukraine, from Kiev. As mentioned, and yeah, I have an education in international relations, was always interested in that. Worked in numerous NGOs in Poland and Ukraine. Most of them were connected with social issues, human rights, and refugee rights as well. Also was working and volunteering in Amnesty International, Warsaw's Security Council, and many others. So today, we will be talking about Ukrainian culture, and I just wanted to let you know a little bit of facts that Ukraine is a huge country with 44 million people in the country. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that I'll be speaking on behalf of my nation, but yeah, just basically culture is a complex of common characteristic of spiritual, material, and intellectual features of society. And I'm just going to try to sum up as best as I can and to present it all for you today. So I discussed this topic with a lot of Ukrainians, so I just wanted to let you know that yeah, we discussed that and we literally wrote down most common things that we use, some characteristics, some traditions, some behaviors. So yeah, I kind of created my own database of these things. So yeah, I'll be happy to share all of them with you. Just to start, you can see that we have numerous ethnicities in Ukraine and many different religions. So it's really hard to put everything together. And yeah, so I just wanted to keep in mind that yeah, Ukraine is just full of different nationalities and religions overall. So a little bit of history, but before that, I just wanted to emphasize that as soon as Ukrainians are arriving to Ireland, we are in a huge cultural shock. So whenever you are working with Ukrainians, it's indeed, Ireland welcomes us with open arms, and it might seem like Ukrainians have no words to express their gratitude, but you will hear my stories later and you will understand why. So starting from the history, we have, well, basically certain behavior and cultural aspects cannot be explained better without understanding our roots, where the culture is coming from. And we don't need to have to dig deeper. I just wanted to start from Soviet Union that brought us to our modern history. And yeah, this is, I would say that Ukrainians are very popular for being like a nation of like always struggle and fighting for their rights, for their freedoms. And we were marginalized community for many years. And Soviet Union is like the best example, I think. But before that, I'll be happy to share more resources with you. So yeah, it's Soviet Union can be defined as like quite limited, like restrictive and controlling state, and we have like deep roots into that. So education was strict, and people just lived to work and survive basically all the time. That's why maybe for Irish people, Ukrainians might seem very straightforward, very bold, very like serious people, but it's not really like that. So we are called as a nation of liberty at the moment. It's pretty like probably self-explanatory at the moment, but yeah, we are the nation who always, no matter what, fights for our rights, for our freedoms, and for our nation, and generally for our better future. I would like to mention the example of Maidan. Probably you are familiar with that, with everything what is happening at the moment in the country. So we never allow to be under like somebody's strict control, not anymore. We just like tolerated this for quite a lot of years. And at the moment, we just built this resistance, and just like the soul of nation is very strong at the moment. So we are very proud of who we are, and we definitely show it in any way we can at the moment. So this is why I just wanted to also add that why people are going through a lot of stress at the moment. It is totally clear. We go through uncertainty. So working with Ukrainians might be very difficult in terms of that we want to have everything and like everything done at the moment at this exact place. Whoever we are facing, either it's like Irish just nationals are meeting us at the airport, or we're working with Red Cross or any other like migrant help organizations. People, when they meet them, we just really want to fix everything like at the moment, and we do not have this patience just because people are going through a lot of stress factors, which of course affecting them very much. It's like huge trauma. So an uncertainty scares us at the moment, taking everything into account, like how our past was, that the government was not really trustworthy before. So yeah, every time we hear that we need to wait for a certain time to get things resolved, we get a little bit frustrated. But yeah, it's just a cultural difference that we need to accept. But I just wanted to mention this for you not to get it like in a rude way. We're totally grateful for everything that Irish organizations are doing, but we might be a little bit impatient at this in this sense. So yeah, our other cultural features that we have, it's million of them, and I would be happy to share with you like as much as I can. If you have questions, we can continue later. But in comparison, I would say that like the best thing that we've noticed is that like Irish kindness and generosity, which we also have, but we do not show it on that extent. Ukrainian culture is very individualistic, and we truly care about like our friends and family, but Ireland is more focused on the community. You're a small country, and like as I said, in Ukraine there are like 44 million people. So yeah, our people are too like as well very kind, and you will see that, but we do not express it at this extent. So we tend to keep things inside, which is also a very common feature. We also tend to like stay strong all the time, no matter what happens. And here my topic comes to like some mental health help. When people arrive, like I would say the best example would be to talk about people from Mariupol. Even when like I volunteered and met some people from like the Ukrainian cities that went through like the worst atrocities, and people ask like if they need any help, they usually say that they are totally fine and they do not need any support. Yeah, we just need to accept that and do our best to support these people. Any conversation, they will totally feel much better if you keep talking to them. But at first, everybody will deny that they have any issues, because we are very strong. We are trying to do our best and to deal with everything ourselves. So any help might be denied at first, but yeah, I strongly believe that we just need to show more support to these people, and they should open up before they actually can trust and proceed further with like cooperating with you. So thank you for your attention. I could speak about this topic for hours and hours, but I will be happy to pass the topic to our next speaker. But also I prepared a few further reads for you if you are interested in like digging deeper into the culture. These are 3 articles, and you can find a lot of very interesting information about traditions and behavioral culture. Yeah, so in the end, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer all of them. Thank you for your attention again.
Thank you very much, Elisa. That's very interesting, and it's fantastic to get that kind of an explanation as to why people may behave or appear to behave in certain ways. That there's a whole reason behind that in terms of their history and their values, and their social and economic factors, and a whole lot of things there as to why they behave differently. I remember once I went on an exchange to the United States of America, an English-speaking country with a huge shared heritage with Ireland, and one of the best parts of that program I had was the cultural briefing, and the Americans found that even more of value when they came to Ireland. So it's certainly something for host families to consider and to have a proper appreciation of. So thank you very much for that little taster in relation to that subject. So I'm going to invite in our next speaker, if that's okay, because we are tight for time tonight. I'm going to ask Olga Casey from the Irish Red Cross to join us now and to share her presentation. Olga's been working from a background in international peace building, security and development practice, and she's previously worked as a project officer in Altogether in Dignity Ireland and with the International Organization for Migration with the UN in Southeastern Africa. So Olga's bringing great experience and great understanding of this particular topic, and we're delighted to have her with us this evening. So over to you, Olga.
Thank you so much. I just want to confirm that you can see my presentation.
Yeah, we can see that. That's great. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. And I just want to say thank you again to Elisa for her presentation, because it's just great to have a briefing on Ukrainian culture, and it's a good to understand when you're hosting Ukrainian families just a little bit of what they're coming from or where they're coming from. So as mentioned, I'm from the Irish Red Cross. I'm a migration services resettlement caseworker. I just want to give a brief background to the war in Ukraine as up to May. So I'm just going to read from the slide here. So on the 24th of February, new phase in the armed conflict in Ukraine with the intensification and spread of the hostilities that are now affecting most parts of the country and causing major concern for protection of civilians and essential civilian infrastructure. As you can see in the picture that's provided, there's just a lot of destruction all over Ukraine at the moment, and it's only intensifying. So heavy fighting and shelling continues across several towns and cities in Ukraine, with increasing human cost and humanitarian consequences. And Lisa touched on this as well. This comes after months of rising political and military tensions and 8 years of conflict in and around eastern Ukraine, where it's an estimated 2.9 million people are already in need of humanitarian assistance, and 1.4 million were internally displaced. Now, since the onset of hostilities, more than 6 million people have fled Ukraine. I'm just going to skip on ahead here now and say that there's approximately 27,300 refugees in Ireland. Now, that number isn't exact as to date, but it's in and around there because it's constantly changing. The Red Cross has been supporting authorities in welcoming and supporting Ukrainian refugees in Ireland. Through our branches, the Irish Red Cross volunteers are meeting with refugees as they arrive in airports and ferry ports across Ireland. Volunteers offer them basic items such as food, clothing, personal hygiene items, and if there's children, they give them colouring books and nice little things like that. We're also focused on information provision and providing psychosocial first aid and transport to those who are in need of it to their accommodation or to wherever they're being placed in the country when they arrive. Now, so turning to the register of pledges, I know that there are people here who have pledged their accommodation or pledged vacant rooms through the Irish Red Cross, and I just want to say that it's greatly appreciated. I want to just give a little explanation of the Register of Pledges. So it fronts and promotes, manages public goodwill in the form of offers of accommodation, goods and services. So we deliver the direct assistance to families and single people through the provision of professional casework services, offering a wraparound support to refugees, promoting engagement with education, employment, social protection and health services. So that's where I come in. I am a caseworker, migration caseworker. So when people are being placed in pledged accommodation, I will be assisting in the facilitation of their move-in and any assistance that they need after that. So the Irish Red Cross has been providing this support in relation to the Irish government since 2015 to assist the fulfilment of its EU commitment in promoting resettlement and integration of refugees under the Irish Refugee Protection Programme. Now, if you've been on the Register of Pledges website, you might have seen these. These are the criteria that the Red Cross says that is needed when people pledge their accommodation, and it's fairly straightforward, really. If you're pledging a spare room in your house, you have to have the appropriate space required for the people that are going to be placed. So let's say you pledge one room and it's one double bedroom that can only provide assistance then to 2 people maximum. So we also require with a spare, if you pledged a spare room, a minimum of 6 months. Now we ask for a 12-month commitment, but we understand that people, circumstances are different for everyone. When they're trying to host families and things can get a little bit difficult. So 6 months to 12 months is what we ask for, really. Then also we ask for accommodation or pledged properties that are near certain facilities such as shops, transport, schools, GPs, clinics, and so on. This is because a lot of people who are coming from Ukraine, they don't have access to their personal documents, let's say, or they haven't enough funds to acquire a vehicle to travel around in. So if you have to be mindful, if you're pledging an accommodation or a shared room in rural areas, the Ukrainian refugees who are placed in your property might not actually be able to travel outside of that rural area and get the actual assistance that they might require at the time. So if there was a mother and a child in a pledged spare room, that child would have to get access to education, so primary school, and then they'd have to change GPs to the local area, and they also have to fend for themselves when it comes to cooking, because not everyone wants not everyone wants to be trying to cook for people every single day when they can do it themselves. So they might want to go to the shop, but if they can't go there, it's fairly self-explanatory, really. So when the Irish Red Cross ring up, we ask these basic questions to see what the situation is of the pledged property. Now, this is the pledging a spare room and pledging a vacant property. Now, this is the step-by-step process. Now, they're the exact same for both. So you'll receive an acknowledgement call over the phone, and everyone who calls will go over the details. Now, I must emphasize that you have to pick up the phone. I know that people can get a little bit worried when a strange number pops up, but it might be some of our volunteers or the Defence Forces or some of the NGOs that are helping us out trying to contact you in relation to your pledged property. So if you see a random phone number pop up, it might be us. So then what will happen is we will try and reach out again should we have a suitable family that we think would be suitable for the pledged property. And then myself as a caseworker, or some of my colleagues, or some of the people who are qualified in assessing properties will arrange to view the properties. And this will just see what's in the property, and if the criteria that matches the suitable persons that will be arriving in your property. And then after that, it's a fairly quick process. We try and move the family in as quick as possible from where they're staying, and then the caseworker, as myself, will take over from there. Now, this is a statement that Lee made not too long ago, and as Elisa was saying, the public, the Irish public, is just so generous. We're so good, nearly too good. And like there's so many accommodation countrywide that's been provided, but we just want to say to be patient, wait for us to reach out, and we acknowledge that it can get a little frustrating when you have a property and you want to help now. But just know that you're on our radar and you will be contacted as soon as we're able to. Now, I do know that there's a lot of pledged shared properties in Kerry specifically. So at the moment, we're actually focusing on vacant properties. So those are the people who are of high needs will be in there first. So we're trying to get them into those properties first before we go towards the shared. So these are then the documents that are required when you are pledging your accommodation. So there's a temporary accommodation license agreement. And as I said, it can range from 6 months to a year, depending on what you pledged or your circumstance. And this is between the pledged property owner and the tenant, the Ukrainian family or person that is moving in. And these are basically like standard rules, and it'll be signed then there and then on the day. The same then for the vacant property, but there's also a memorandum of understanding between the Irish Red Cross and the pledged property owner, as the owner does not live in the property. So it's an agreement that is understood in terms of the license agreement. And then a lot of people say once the family is moved in, do they get any support afterwards? So yes, they do, casework support. So that's myself and my colleagues. And then here we address their needs. We try and help them to integrate into Irish society as much as they can, and everything is confidential. So we try to help them in relation to areas of trauma, education, language lessons, health services, family reunification, and potential issues that may arise in the meantime. And then we also may need interpreters. So let's say on the move-in date, we might need someone who is volunteering their language expertise and are able to speak multiple languages such as Ukrainian, Russian, and English. And it can be very helpful when the family or persons are arriving. And then we provide advice and support, and we help in drawing up house rules. As I said, that's very similar to the license agreement. And then we help with applications in terms of government supports and schemes. So the case where we can be contacted on that number that I've provided there. And of course, you can always reach out to the Red Cross. So then when you move in, you'll have you have to have these checked off. So if the house has to be furnished, we have to assist in that. We have to look into changing the electricity, gas, heating, internet, all of those account names have to be changed into the new occupants' names. That will primarily be concerned with accommodation that's been pledged as vacant, so like a house. However, if the pledged accommodation is shared, then an agreement can be made in the license agreement stating how much percentage of the utilities will be paid by the Ukrainian refugees who will be in the house. So all of the kitchen appliances checked and working, same with the bathroom, hot water working, boilers working, etc. That's the tenancy agreement. And then we looked at potential household risks identified. So is the stairs safe? Is there a balcony? Are children at risk of falling, etc. So basic initial checklists. And then we have a household kit. Now this will be very useful for people who are pledging. We have a list there of the things that we look for or have to try and provide to make the initial move in easy for the Ukrainian refugees, because it can be quite overwhelming when they arrive. And we don't want them popping down to the shop and having to buy these things. Now, of course, sometimes that will be the case, but we try and have everything as comfortable as possible for them when they arrive. So there's just a list of things that that you can look through. And then there's the actual move-in date checklist. So everyone does introductions. We also like to have the pledgers there so that everyone can meet each other. We look at the documents. Again, they're different for shared or vacant. We exchange numbers. Should people want to have a WhatsApp group, we try and set up a WhatsApp group. Now, not a lot of Ukrainian people who have arrived like contacting through email, so they prefer phone numbers or calls. And then again, you have to provide the address, the air code, emergency information in case they need it. We like to have the pledgers go through the workings of the house and the utilities. So we understand that there's a lot of switches involved in trying to turn on water and heating, and it can get very confusing. So it's nice to have someone there who knows the workings to show the Ukrainians who are arriving. And then we also encourage the family to go around the area and see where the schools are, where the public transport, bus stops are, etc. And then we answer any questions that they have, and then we just allow them to relax and settle in, because as I said, it can be extremely overwhelming. And then this is another thing that I provided, because it's very handy for the people who are arriving to know where these things are. So if the pledger provides this information upon the occupants arriving, it can help them a lot. Even if you send this information online and send them Google Maps links to these, it can be excellent. So yeah, that's a basic overview. That's the number for the register of pledges should you have any more information. And we thank you so much for pledging your accommodation, because it's amazing. It really, really is. Just the generosity and the wanting and willing to help. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Olga. That was very thorough, and you covered an awful lot of information there. You know, and obviously there's a very complicated process there, which I think the Red Cross has a very good handle on. And even just by you going through those slides, you've really set that out for people who've tuned into the webinar tonight, all the different things that have to be considered in making that transition from your initial feeling to make an offer all the way through to the completion and the provision of the wraparound services. So we actually have some questions in relation to that, and I think we'll come back to those after our next speaker once we get into the Q&A. So again, if you do have questions from the public, we'd love to get them. Put them into the chat panel there, and we'll assign them to Olga, Lacey, and to the other speakers who are with us this evening. So I'm going to invite Mary now. She's got her slide rack ready to go, which is a brilliant seamless transition for me. So Mary, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us from Turk here in Kerry. We'd be delighted to hear about the type of services that are available to refugees in Kerry. So over to you, Mary.
Thanks very much, Brian. Thanks to everyone, and it's great to be here and to provide information, because as you said earlier, we've been working now since really before St. Patrick's Day on the ground with the Ukrainian refugees in the various centres around the Tralee area, and we're seeing more and more queries then from families who are hosting Ukrainian refugees in the community. So it's really timely to do this, because I know there's lots of questions out there. I'm speaking tonight for Tralee International Resource Centre, but I'm also talking as well for, I suppose, on behalf of CASI, who are our equivalent organisation based in Killarney, who do almost exactly the same type of work as we do, in that we're all about supporting and advocating for the international community. And in Tralee, we've been doing it for more than 13 years now. So we support all asylum seekers, refugees, and the international community. And I've just written up there all the different services we provide. And so I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through the slides. Let me just hope this will move on now. Okay. Yeah, I'll just go back there. Sorry, I'm just learning how to do this now. So yeah, CASI, as well as I said, Killarney Immigrant Support Centre, an NGO based in Killarney, who do the same work as we do, effectively supporting asylum seekers, refugees, and other migrants. So how can we help you? I suppose if I was listening in and I was a host family, or thinking of being a host family, I might be concerned about how will I find out about all the various things I might have to find out about to help your refugees settle in to life in Kerry. So I suppose that's where we come in, because we can help you really to help them. So we can help with filling forms, we can help to direct to relevant services, we can link to doctors and medical services, we provide English classes, we can link you to more English classes, we can help with schooling, information, support. We're also a social space and I suppose a friendly ear. If anyone wants to come into us in our centre, they can join in anything we do, and the same with CASI, and we can just basically help to integrate into new life in Kerry. The way I'd like to say it is, it's like, I suppose we're trying to be the one-stop shop, because tonight on the panel we've all the great agencies who are doing all the work on the ground as well. But sometimes it can be very difficult, even if you're from Ireland and from Kerry and you know what to do. It's quite hard to work out the system and where you should go and who you should ring to actually get what you want. So the way I look at CASI and Turk is that we're the one-stop shop. So if you just want one number and you can ring us, we can direct you then to the relevant person, or we can actually speak to the agency on your behalf to help you to further what you need. The way I was just going to quickly do tonight, because I don't want to spend too long, because if I give too much information, nobody will remember. And then possibly the most important information I give tonight is our phone number and CASI's phone number and all our links, but we can do that at the end. But I was just trying to talk through maybe what would come up for people. So it's almost like a step-by-step guide. If you landed in Ireland and you're a Ukrainian refugee, what needs to happen for you in not in particular order, but the main things that need to happen. So the most important thing that everybody coming in should have or will have is a temporary residence letter. It's known as the yellow paper, and that's confirming that they have temporary residency in Ireland. And this is valid for 1 year. It may be extended after that. We're not sure about what's going to happen on that, but that's the initial piece of paper, I suppose, giving them status to stay and be resident in Ireland. If a refugee did not get that letter, which some of them didn't, and it can cause a lot of upset then, and they really need to have it, it's possible to get one. There's offices in Dublin, Cork and Limerick, which is a little bit of a trek to get there, but if we can help again with that, if that's something people need help with. The other important thing, and again we'll be discussing it with our panel tonight, is to get your PPS number. Really important that you get that very quickly. So you go to your nearest Intrio office. I've just put up the one in Tralee, but wherever is nearest to you, you'll need to bring a form of identification with you if you have one of those. Some people might have their PPS number already, and if they have, then still go to your local Intrio office when you arrive in Kerry. And then if you have children and you already have a PPS numbers, you can go to the office alone. But if you had not got your PPS, then make sure you bring your children with you, because they'll need their own PPS numbers. This is one of the most important first things to do. And then you're going to get help to apply for financial assistance, supplementary welfare allowance. I'm not going to go into the details tonight because there's my learned colleagues on the panel who can help in detail with this. But again, it's just that they know they will get support. There will be a payment for them, because when they arrive, they won't have work straight away. And again, their children will get child benefit like any resident in Ireland will get as well. And they'll get a public service card. And they'll get a letter or an email telling them where their payment will be. And again, if they don't get that letter, the most important thing to do is to contact the local Intrio office. It's just usually by email, like tralee@welfare.ie is for Tralee, but depending if you're in Killarney, Killarney@welfare.ie, or wherever your Intrio office is. And then they are being transitioned at the moment, the refugees, from this payment to the mainstream social welfare payments. So job seekers allowance, or it could be old age pension or disability allowance, whatever is the relevant payment, they will be transitioned onto that. And it was the most important thing to say is that if there's any change in circumstances for the refugee, as if they take up work or if they go on a certain training program, or even if they're volunteering for several days, they need to make the entry office aware of that. That's really important, like anyone would have to do, because that's a change in their circumstances. And again, that can be a simple email into the office. The next thing, medical cards, really important. One of the first things that will be, I suppose, of concern to host families, what would happen if something happened to the family that they're hosting. So they will receive a medical card, and there is a special medical card form for people from the Ukraine, and this can be downloaded. But again, we can help with that, or Kazi can help with that. And that card will then help them to get access to GP and hospital care and all the other services that come. And there's a web, if anyone wants to check out on the HSE website, there is a specific section for supports to Ukrainian refugees, and it's in several languages as well there, which is very useful. Schools, the number one thing that people were asking us about the refugees as soon as they arrived wasn't so much about where, accommodation, work, whatever it was for their children. Obviously, we all put our children first. So where would the children be placed in school? So there's a very good system of support for this through the Kerry Education Training Board. There's a REALT team, Regional Education and Language Teams. So they are there, and they will help to place children in primary and secondary schools. And already there's been a large number of children placed throughout County Kerry. So again, there's to know that there's support and help to do this. And that's just the email address for the person in charge of placing children. But again, if you just remember to contact us or Kazi, we can pass all that on. Again, a little simple thing that if you can go to your post office, a Ukrainian refugee can go to a post office, they can get a free Irish SIM card once they show their Ukrainian ID. And then they have 3 months free calls to Ukrainian mobiles, landlines. So it's just a little thing that people might know about. Again, just giving information that can be of use to the families when they arrive. Really super support from St. Vincent de Paul has been wonderful to provide all the support on practical needs. The shops have a wide range of clothes, toys, furniture, very low prices, and they've been a wonderful support to the refugees in the centres around Kerry. Right to work. Again, Ukrainian refugees have the right to work in Ireland once they have their permission letter confirming they have their temporary protection. And again, if they take up any work or any change in circumstances, contact their intro office. And the one thing I've really noticed is, my God, they all really want to work straight away. So it's really positive, and lots of them have already taken up jobs. And again, there's lots of help to find work. Local Employment Service, jobs clubs, NEWKD have their Moving On group, there's recruitment agencies, and there's jobs fairs. There was one in Tralee, there's one coming up in Killarney very soon. And then if people have qualifications, if they want to check, is their qualification valid here, there's a website address that they can check that on. So again, contact us if you want to get that website. And then there's any qualified teachers in the Ukrainian community. They can directly contact the Kerry Education Training Board, Betty Corky, and she will help to, see what possible work opportunities they could take up. And third level, there's a new help desk has been set up for Ukrainian refugees wanting to get information on third level. That's the email address there and a number. Again, all this will be available afterwards. And then there's also loads of training opportunities. The National Learning Network, Kerry College, wherever else, the MTU, wherever people want to follow up themselves. Driver's license, Ukrainians can exchange their Ukrainian driving license for an Irish license on a temporary basis. And the new license will be valid for 12 months. That's for cars only. English classes, hugely important. If you want to integrate anywhere, we know ourselves, even if we go on holidays, you're completely lost if you don't speak the language. And, that is so important. And we place a lot of emphasis on that in Kazi and in Tralee International Resource Centre. We provide a lot of English classes. So our English classes are run. We've daily classes, several levels catered for, and they're all free and they're taught by voluntary teachers. And we've also started teaching in the various centres around Kerry as well. And the other thing is the KETB provide English, and people can register to take part in the ESOL courses there, and whatever level they're at, they can get help with that. I suppose just to finish up, really what I have noticed with this whole work we've been doing is the huge interagency, super support, super people coming together. Nothing is any trouble. Everyone is willing to help. And the same will apply to the centres that we've been working in Kerry. The same will apply to the host families out in the community. If anybody needs any help, we're all going to pull together and help. And that's definitely true. So contact details, I have them up there. If you want to find us, the easiest thing I think to find us is on Facebook, because just look up Tralee International Resource Centre and all our contacts are there. And the same for Killarney, Kazi, if you look them up on Facebook as well. And it's the easiest way to find all their details. So that's it. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if people have questions afterwards.
That's great. That's fantastic, Mary. Thank you very much again. A huge amount of information covered very, very quickly to give you credit. But if anybody was busy scribbling away email addresses and websites, don't worry. We'll share all that information with people after the webinar. We'll provide you with a copy of the PowerPoint slides from the various speakers as well. But we'll definitely send you out those contact details that Mary has kindly shared with us there. So don't worry about if you didn't get the details down. We'll get that out to you quite quickly. So we're going to move on to I suppose to the public's part of the webinar. We've heard from some of the expert speakers, so we have got some questions in advance. They came directly to Kerry County Council and to some of the other agencies before the webinar. So we're delighted to start off with those. We've also had some questions already through the chat function. So to the people who've put those questions in there, thank you very much, and we'll try and get to those as quickly as we can. And get you your answers. So just to give you an idea as to who is on the call with us tonight, in terms of the agencies that make up the Kerry Community Response Forum and also the other agencies that we have on the call tonight, but also to give you a flavour as to who's actually on this webinar. So 69% of the people who've registered for the webinar tonight are interested in learning more about the process and what's involved in hosting Ukrainian refugees, which is tremendous. We've got 4 or 5% of people who joined us who are already in the business of providing a service, which is great. And we have 27% of the people who registered for the webinar are involved with community groups who might be providing services, or they're involved with agencies. So we have a really good spread of people on the call tonight. But in terms of the panel that are with us tonight, again, Kerry Community Response Forum members, we have people from the community wing of the HSE. We have CASI, who Mary Carroll was talking about there, the Clarny NGO, who have been working with non-nationals and migrants for a number of years now. Likewise, Mary's organisation, Turk. We have Anna Dwyer joining us from the Kerry Education and Training Board. We've Aideen from the South Kerry Development Partnership, a local company who's involved in a lot of community supports around the county in their patch, which is effectively South Kerry. We have representatives and colleagues here from Kerry County Council. If anything comes our way, we've got Ger Curtin from the Department of Social Protection, and we've already heard, particularly in Mary's presentation, about a number of the supports that the DSP are effectively in the front line for, and for some of those very early engagements with refugees. We have the Red Cross. We've obviously had a presentation from Olga Lacey there, which was fantastic. We've had a presentation from NASC, from Elisa earlier on, and we're joined also by Robert Carey from New Kids. New Kids do similar work to South Kerry Development Partnership. They're a local action group who are involved in a part of the county that really goes all the way from the top of the county out to the tips of the Dingle Peninsula and down to I suppose the banks of the Main. So a very, very good stakeholder group. These are all forum members in the Kerry Community Response Forum. So for people who have questions, I think we've got a good crew of people to maybe help you get your answers and encourage you further along the process of hosting refugees from Ukraine. So I'll start off with taking some of the questions that have already come in, if that's okay with people. I might ask the members of the Q&A panel just to turn on their microphones, turn on their cameras first of all, and turn on your microphones when I direct the question to you. And I suppose I better start off by telling which agency I'm going to send these questions to. So, Olga, I might start off with you, if that's okay, and the Red Cross, because obviously a lot of questions have come in relation to the services that the Red Cross is providing in this space, because really that's really where they've first engaged with the process of saying, I'd like to take on a Ukrainian family in either my vacant property or to share accommodation that's vacant rooms that are in my house. So the first question, and I suppose we hear a lot of this in social media and in mainstream media, is, you know, I pledged my house ages ago, but I haven't heard back from the Red Cross yet. Obviously, you've set that out actually very clearly earlier on in relation to the workload that's involved and the number of checks and balances. I think there's between, 2,900, 3,000 refugees in Kerry alone, and a lot of those will be looking for services. So can you tell us, I suppose, a little bit about the process and how long people might reasonably be waiting before they get contacted by the Red Cross?
Yeah, so again, as I mentioned, you have to answer your phones. So I was actually looking up numbers recently as well for the pledged accommodation in Kerry, and just over 400 people have pledged their accommodation. This is both shared and vacant. So I know that over a quarter of these have already been successfully contacted and shortlisted and reviewed, and people have provided the accurate information about their accommodation. But then a lot of people have also pulled out. So it can be difficult when you mentioned there are a couple of thousand refugees waiting for accommodation. But again, checks and balances have to be made, and the accommodations have to be viewed, assessed, and the people who are placed have to be suitable for the area as well. So yeah, I hope that gives a little bit of insight.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I suppose it dovetails with the information you provided to us earlier on. I might stick with you, Olga, as well, because we have a couple more Red Cross related questions. So if somebody said, well, look, I've pledged my house, but it hasn't worked out. What's the process there? Do they re-engage with the Red Cross, or how do they resolve that situation?
So if they've pledged their house and there's a family or a person who's been placed in the pledged accommodation through the Red Cross, then of course they can reach out to the Red Cross again and raise their concerns. And this is where the documents come in, because a lot of them are agreements that are written and approved upon on the day or after the day. So yes, if they've gone through the Red Cross, then yes, of course they can reach out to the Red Cross, and the caseworkers will try and do their best to just assess the situation and see what the issues are.
Okay, that's great. I have another Red Cross question. I'm not going to let you hog the whole webinar, Olga, but I think we're on a nice roll, and these are all related questions, so I'm very happy to tie them all together. Somebody's asked a question on the webinar that if you host a family that were placed with you, not by the Red Cross, but directly through introductions that were made within the community, can you kind of retrospectively go through the engagement with the Red Cross? Can you register with them, and can those people avail of the wraparound services that are provided?
So that's an interesting. I actually saw it on the question panel there. That it's difficult, because this would really depend if they were registered on the register of pledges before they placed this family and went ahead to do it without the Red Cross. Because if they placed the family and had registered their accommodation, then there might be some way that the Red Cross can come in and assist. But if they didn't, then no, we're not involved.
Okay, that's absolutely fine. I might move on to maybe the social welfare, social protection realm. So I might ask Ger to open up his microphone while I get a couple of questions here that have come in that particular area. I suppose somebody's asked a question, what support is provided to families so that they may be independent in terms of buying their food. And Mary has already, I suppose, set out that there is a particular payment that's quickly processed. You might tell us a little bit about how quickly that payment gets processed, Ger, and how long then the process for them to move into the mainstream social protection payments, how long that typically will take.
Yeah, it is my understanding that most people that are in the country at the moment are gone on to the mainstream social welfare payments. So I'd say 90–95% are gone on that. There's going to be an automatic transfer onto mainstream social welfare payments for those over 66, and that's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, hopefully. So basically everyone in the country that's in at this stage are transferred over onto the main social welfare payments. Okay.
Yeah, very good. And another question here that's come in for the DSP. If somebody who's hosting Ukrainian residents and they don't have their yellow papers or temporary protection orders, you know, they obviously need to expedite that process. So I think Mary went through some of the centres that are available to help with that. Cork and Limerick are the nearest two centres to Kerry, is that right? Yeah,
my understanding is that Cork cannot fulfil that function at the moment. Okay. And Limerick is the only office. And I know that through some of the partnerships, they have got buses to take people up to Limerick on pre-arranged visits, and that was rolled out for the Listowel area this week. And I think there is some bus going from South Kerry next week. So that's the only card that's available. There is talk about a new identification card being available, but this isn't true at the moment. I've been on to the Department of Justice this morning, and they're not aware of any major change taking place in the next months in regard to identification cards. And this letter will be the most important. The only thing that they are at the moment looking at is putting a photo on those letters, which we're talking about up to 30,000 people being accommodated with this, so it'll be a major piece of work.
Very good. And I see some people have clarified that in the chat, and also in the chat there's a little bit of supplementary information that there's 2 abridged forms available for people from Ukraine who are transitioning from certain social welfare payments for one parent family and job seekers allowance. So that's good information to have, and to have those corrections. So thanks to people who posted those. There was another question, Ger, in relation to the DSP area, that if you have a Ukrainian refugee staying with your family, and they manage to get a job, who do they need to notify? What contacts or communications do they need to make to say, look, I'm in receipt of employment now, and I may not need those welfare payments?
Yeah, again, Mary, I think highlighted that they can email into the local entry offices, and there's entry offices in most of the major towns with the details of their change, taking up employment. They may be still entitled to some social welfare payment with their employment, so we would start that out locally with them once we are made aware of the type of employment they've taken up. The most important thing is that they will make contact with the entry office. There is a body of opinion out there that people can work the 20 hours. That's not true. I was on a regional forum this morning, and this is going around nationally, and the department are anxious to confirm that that is not correct. Once you take up any form of employment or training, and if you are in receipt of a social welfare payment, you have to make contact with the department.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that clarification. And there was some questions there again in the chat about do Ukrainian refugees get financial support from the Irish government? They're effectively entitled to the supports as were outlined by the previous speakers and by Mary in her presentation. So I hope that answers the question for that person. There is a number of questions I might ask Mary Carroll or maybe Kasia to come in on from Turk and from Kazi. So if you could open up your microphones, these would be maybe community-related questions. So the first question that I put to you, maybe Mary, is how can Ukrainians that are kind of accommodated by families in Kerry communities, how can they get in contact with other members of the Ukrainian community? Is that something that just happens organically, or are there roles for agencies and for people in community groups to bring them together?
No, we can definitely help with that. And that has come up time and time again. People can be isolated if they're in a kind of maybe a remote town or part of Kerry. So yeah, I would say contact ourselves or contact Kazi, and we can try and link them into groups that are already taking place. Because obviously we have the big centres where there are a lot of Ukrainian refugees. So we can help to link into activities that are happening there or activities in our centres.
Very good. And Kasia Zivik, you're from Kazi. First of all, congratulations to Kazi on your award last night at the Pride of Place Awards. Great acknowledgement of the role that you're providing and your colleagues are providing in Kazi. I might ask you a question again related to kind of maybe community services, but if you had, say, a Ukrainian mother with a young family and that person gets a job, but she has kids that maybe need to use child minding services, how do we go about that, or how does the host family go about that process?
Basically, they are childcare services available for the Ukrainian refugees on the same basis as for the for the Irish people. At the moment, we are working with TUSLA about the TUSLA referrals. So there is a chance that if the family will find a setting where which is participating in the TUSLA referrals, they may avail the service for free. As I'm saying, it depends on the service that the family is choosing.
Very, very good. Thanks for clarifying that. I have a couple of questions that are, I suppose, maybe more, again, I'm not sure if they're maybe suitable for you, Olga, maybe to answer, or maybe for Ger, just in relation to, there is a scheme that's being mooted where the government will make a contribution through the social welfare system to host families. Is there any update in relation to that situation? This is the €400 that's being discussed.
Brian, the only thing that I got confirmation this morning was that the €400 payment is going to be administered by the Department of Social Protection. No other details are known as of now. Whether it's going to be a €400 a month payment to a household or per individual, that's not clear. But I would imagine it's per household, but that's not decided yet.
Okay. Thank you, Ger. And again, like, there's obviously that's a developing situation, so we'll obviously try and update people when we do get some clarity in relation to it. The organisers of the forum here will be in contact with people with that update. There's some questions again have come in on the chat. So somebody's asked a question: are all the placements happening through the Red Cross in Kerry? Are there any local bodies involved in directly placing families in shared accommodation? Does any member of the panel want to take that question up? Obviously, the Red Cross, I think, would be the preferred vehicle. That would be a very strong message we give out, is that the Red Cross will be our preferred partner. I don't think any of the agencies that are on this call will be involved in the.
Right. I just from community welfare side of the house, from the Department of Social Protection, there is a right for a person who goes into independent family or independent house accommodation that they can apply for assistance with the rent under supplementary welfare allowance. So if a family moved out and decided to rent a house, they can get assistance on the supplementary welfare allowance. I don't think it is available through county council schemes, so that is available.
Okay, I might ask Niamh O'Sullivan to come in there. You won't see her, but you'll hear her. She's sitting here beside me in Killarney. But Niamh, you've a view in relation to this, yeah?
Olga's presentation was excellent there. Actually, we're going to share the presentation, the slides. Olga was very comprehensive for families just who are interested in pledging, is to go through the Red Cross. They're the recognised agency. Just in relation to one of the questions there, a family that haven't gone through the Red Cross, maybe supports could be provided locally if we knew where that family were located through the area response teams. That wraparound service, sometimes that can be captured by the area response team. We've Aideen in South Kerry, Robert in North Kerry, as well as Kazi and Turk. I'm just conscious of that question, that person and that the family that they're looking after receive those wraparound, because everyone is entitled to those kind of support services. But anybody interested in pledging, go through the formal process there with Red Cross. Olga detailed very clearly the steps in relation to that process as well. And we'll share that presentation with all the participants on tonight's webinar. Thanks, Brian.
Very good. Thank you, Niamh, for the clarification there. I have a couple of questions. I don't know, Anna Dwyer, if your microphone is working, if you can hear me. I have a couple of questions in relation to language. Well, maybe Mary, she touched on this subject as well, around the service provisions for people who want to learn English. If you could just recap that, because there is a question here that's come in by email around how can the Ukrainian families of different ages and different abilities engage with improving their English, or people who've got no English, how can they get off the ground?
Well, Ivan is coming in, but I'll just say that we have, and Kazi have, English classes every day, different levels, and all people have to do is just contact our offices. I put the numbers up for both offices in the chat, and just we'll register them and we can sign them up to whatever class they want to go to. And then definitely to contact the KTB Further Education Training section for the ESOL. courses, which is a very good course to get on as well, to study at whatever level, be it the total beginner up to advanced.
Yeah, and can you hear us now, or can you unmute your microphone now? No, we're not hearing it. Go ahead, Eamon, sorry.
Anne has put a note into the chat just to say that her mic is disabled, so obviously she's not in a position to answer you.
Okay, thanks very much for that. And sorry about that, Anne. We've tried to unmute you from here, but it doesn't seem to have worked. So, but if you can put further information, Anne, into the chat, that would be very helpful and appreciated. And obviously, that's information that we'll share with people. We share with people outside. That's even just what you put in there. 2,000 people currently in classes indicates that there's a huge amount of learning of English going on around the place by the service providers like KETB and like Kazi and Turk. So that's fantastic. That's a very interesting question. Somebody's just asked, what about classes for Irish people to learn Ukrainian? Is there anybody doing a bit of language skills to help us engage with the people who are visitors, albeit temporary, into our communities to maybe help ease that transition? So is there any Ukrainian classes being given? Does anybody have any observations in relation to that? Mary or Kasia again, or maybe Anne on the chat. So I just see Anna's come in on the chat there to say that Kerry ETB will certainly look to that, and I think that would be very useful. And again, Kerry ETB is a track record in delivering language learning anyway, so they'd be certainly great partners to deliver that type of service county-wide. Kasia or Mary, have you any further points?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because like that's all about intercultural exchange, which is really what it's about, and integration, people meeting people from different cultures, and a great opportunity. Yeah, we've done that before. We've had French classes, Arabic classes, all different classes in our centre. So why not? We can look at that for sure. Good idea.
Yes, I'm totally agreeing with Mary. It's a great idea, especially that I'm finding myself learning Ukrainian. Like, do I want it or do I not want it? So it would be a great for the local community to be able to avail the service like that. Even just the few very simple words may be changing the situation.
Maho Rivas, I see you've got your hand raised. Do you want to come in there? Okay. Just allow your mic, sorry.
Hello, thanks.
Yeah, hello.
Thank you for that. And top marks for pronouncing my name, yay. The J can be deceptive. So my name is Maho. I'm from NASC as well. I'm in Elisa's team. So look, I guess I just wanted to let you know that, I know we're normally based in Cork, but our phone lines are open. But to let you know, I'm part of the community sponsorship team, and we would have normally worked with people who might have been thinking about sponsoring refugees and preparing maybe for a year or two before welcoming refugees. And I know right now, like, that situation has been inverted. Refugees are already here and communities are eager to help. So together with the open community, of which, several organizations are part of, there are supports available right now for people who are hosting Ukrainian refugees. So I've shared that information with the organizers, so you might get it. There's just, there's a few videos that I think might be useful for anyone who's hosting, but also just recognizing that hosting is not necessarily only done by the person who is receiving someone in their house, but it takes a village, it takes a community. And the best approach is to get other people who might not be able to maybe offer housing, but who are around the community, who are able to help. So look, you will get the links. They're interesting videos. There is the Swift integration app as well, that is also available in English and in Ukrainian and other languages, with information about systems here in Ireland. We have a welcome guide that we're trying to update with all of this information, like the real teams and all of these things. So we're trying to include them as much as possible. And look, there are a few organizations all over the country that have been helping communities sponsor refugees for it was a different program, but we're here to help, and people from every place in the country would be able to reach to an organization. So just let you know, yep, that's there. You will be getting the links, and if there's anything we can help with, and including, we have been advocating to get some temporary protection letters here in Cork, but we were only able to get 2 days. over the last couple of weeks. But look, we're still asking, and as I mentioned there in the chat, there is an expectation that every non-EU migrant in the country, legislation requires that they register their immigration permission. So this would have been your usual GNIB cards, IRP we call them now. So that might be something that is going to be coming, but the Department of Justice still hasn't set up how they're going to make that happen. But I've shared the link in the chat just to the Department of Justice, the Immigration Delivery Service, where you can find the latest updates. So when registration is open, if they're going to go through with that, that should be updated there as well. Okay, and look, we're here to help as well. And yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for all that, Maho. That's brilliant. I've maybe just looking at the clock, I want to really try and finish by 8:15. I've two more questions that I might assign. So the first one, I suppose, relates to the language questions that we've been asking. And somebody's asked a question. Maybe Elisa, you could deal with this because it does tap into, I suppose, some of the cultural things. Would it be okay to talk or to use Russian language and Russian with Ukrainian families if you had to?
Of course, thank you. Yeah, so it's really hard to say because even before war, Ukraine was bilingual. So part of Ukraine were speaking Russian and another part was speaking Ukrainian. For example, I'm from capital city. My mother tongue is Russian language, so I speak Russian with my family. So whoever would try to help me, I would definitely 100% appreciate it, whatever language they speak. So I would say that this is like more like local problem. People are arguing like whether they should like switch from Ukrainian to Russian language, of course, like within Ukraine. But if somebody would like genuinely want to help them and like try to be understandable in either Russian or Ukrainian, I think that Ukrainian people would appreciate any help, doesn't matter what language they speak to them. So yeah, this is it.
Very good. Thank you very much. And again, there's been some suggestions there in the chat. People have seen that the likes of Duolingo can provide certainly up to a certain standard of basic conversational Ukrainian and conversational Russian. So there's some tools that people might want to maybe have a look at. You can do it on your phone, you can do it on your computer. So that's very useful. I have a question there in relation to the services that are provided locally on the ground that maybe Robert and Aideen, if I could ask you to unmute your microphones and come in and join us. And if you can give us a sense of the kind of services that the development companies are involved in, both New Kid and South Kerry Development Partnership. Could you give us a sense of the services you provide either to host families or to the refugee community?
Yeah, do you want me to?
Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah. So I suppose we're involved in the local coordination groups. So we provide coordination for the local coordination groups in Listowel and in West Kerry. That basically is just to ensure that there's collaboration and good communication between all the agencies and groups, and yeah, that's working very well. And then in terms of, we also do direct work on the ground. So in relation to the direct supports we provide, it ranges from social support such as we've done linking people to local clubs, helping them to socially integrate. We've kind of surveyed people in terms of like what they're interested in, and then surveyed clubs and tried to match the two. Where we've supported trips to bus trips to the beach, trips to even boat trips out in West Kerry actually. So just basically to help people to get out, to help them to get out into the community, to help them to integrate. And then in terms of recreation things, basically whatever people want within reason, everything from yoga to art classes, things to do for the kids as well. I suppose in terms of things like education, then we've a laptop loan scheme. So we've people who've needed laptops to, some people would be doing, they'd be completing exams in the Ukraine. So we've lent out laptops. And then in terms of employment, we can help people to get jobs. So we held a jobs fair, and we've also followed that up then with we're going to develop clinics with people to to support them with job searching and job coaching. That's a flavor of it. I suppose essentially really we're a community development organization, so we provide a wide range of supports, community, social and economic supports on the ground. And yeah, we run about 15 programs. So if people are hosting refugees and they're looking at how to integrate people into communities, or how to maybe help people get jobs or to get into local groups, or even educational support. They can contact us. We have offices in Listowel, Dingle, and Castle Island and Tralee. And as Mary was saying, you can go on our Facebook or our website, or you can contact me at robertcarey@newkd.ie. So that's I know you're short for time, so that's a very quick run through. Yeah.
Thanks very much, Robert. And same question to you, Aideen. And actually, I might ask Caroline Doyle from the HSE to prepare, I suppose, a response in relation to the services that you're providing in Kerry as well, if that's okay. And then I'll have one final question that somebody's asked, and I've omitted to get to, but I'll get to it before we wrap up. So, Aideen, the services that South Kerry Development Partnerships involved in?
Yeah, so I suppose all of the services and departments that we have under the umbrella of South Kerry Development Partnership are open to all Ukrainian citizens and all Irish citizens and EU citizens and refugees. So our services are available to all. We have 4 offices. Our main office is in West Main Street in Carsaveen. We have an office in Library Place in Killorglin, the top of High Street in Killarney, and in Henry Street in Kinmare. So the services are available in all of those offices. We offer outreach services as well. Like that, we offer a lot of different social supports, signposting, and a lot of employment supports. I work under the Social Inclusion Community Activation programme. My usual work is supporting community groups. I haven't been doing that for the last 2 months. So my focus has been on supporting the Ukrainian refugees in South Kerry, and for the most part I've been working in Carsaveen, Derrynane now, Kinmare, and a little bit of Sneem as well. So the local response forum covers Valentia, Waterville, Vanskelligs, Glenbeigh, Killorglin. So we're across the board in South Kerry, but all of our services are available to anyone, Irish or otherwise, that requires them.
Very good. And Caroline, you might just come in relation to services that are being provided by the HSE in the county.
Sure. So thanks for the opportunity, Brian. So HSE Community Work Department, we're under social inclusion, and we would have a long history of providing services to groups that are more vulnerable and need more access to services. But I suppose in general, the health service that's available to Irish people is now available to people who've come in from Ukraine. And I suppose for the purpose of the conversation here, just to say people in congregate settings where people come into hotels or guest houses or B&Bs, we have HSE in-reach teams that visit them there. But in terms of families in the community, what I would say to people either who are just about to host a family or thinking about hosting a family, there are a number of resources that would be very useful to you, and I will post them onto the frequently asked questions document that will have all information on health services in Ukrainian and Russian and English. The most important thing for a host family is that once person has the PPSN number, that they help the person fill in the medical card form, and that their local GP, the family's local GP, should become their new guest's GP. So that's a really important thing to do. It's really important if someone comes pregnant that they access a GP very quickly, or if they've any emergency mental health needs, or if they have been in treatment in the Ukraine, that they would let the GP know so that services could be alerted and that people could get treatment as soon as possible. And then other than that, other kind of questions that we would be getting would be around dental. How do I access this service? How do I access that service? And there's some differences between the Ukrainian health system and our own. So we're trying to explain and make sure that people understand that. So I will post all those details, and they'll be available afterwards in the FAQ document, but also to say to people that in terms of trauma and mental health resources, we do have some very useful resources online in HSE land. And for families who are looking at maybe hosting for the first time, we have a free online intercultural training program that's available on HSE land. And Dr. Jennifer Hayes, who's our principal psychologist in HSE Social Inclusion, she's done a huge amount of work in understanding trauma, and she's due to do another webinar next Tuesday. So we can post those details as well.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Very, very comprehensive. Can I thank Anna Dwyer for typing in information quicker than I could read it out. She's put up a huge amount of information there, particularly around the language classes. So to Anna Dwyer from Kerry ETB, thank you very much for your typed engagement. And sorry we couldn't get you technically patched in to talk to us tonight, but we will get all that information out again afterwards, just like the information Caroline will be providing. I've one final question. I wanted to try and get to this because I thought it was a very interesting question asked by a member of the public this evening. Olga, I might ask you to maybe deal with it, but if anybody else has the answer, please chip in. So is there any issues for people around home insurance if they're offering shared accommodation? Is there anything they need to do? Is there anything through the Irish Insurance Federation? Is there anything in place at the moment? Or is there a need for people to contact their home insurance company and make sure everything's okay? Would you have an idea there, Olga?
I think rule of thumb at the moment is just don't say anything to the insurance company that you're with, because there is not much information out there at the moment. If anyone else has more information, that'd be great, because we're finding it we're finding it an interesting topic at the moment. So yeah.
Yeah, and again, if we don't have an answer on the call today, we will try and do a little bit of digging around afterwards and see if we can get a kind of a national position for people, because it's a very valid question. I don't have any further questions that I'm going to get to tonight. So there are some further questions in the chat. And my apologies if we didn't get to everything. I did want to give half an hour for the Q&A part, and the presentations justifiably went on a little bit longer than that. Just to remind everybody, we will give the slide racks out to people. We give all that further information that we discussed out to people who've signed up for this webinar, and we'll also put the webinar online for people to maybe tune in and play back later on the likes of the YouTube channel. So a big thank you to our panelists and our presenters tonight, being great engagement, and thank you especially to the members of the community who've joined us and asked those questions and gave us some questions in advance. So really, really good webinar from my perspective. I learned an awful lot. I hope everybody at home did the same. I started off with a little bit of Ukrainian. I'm going to finish up with a little bit of Ukrainian. So I'll say the Gord of Mahaguts to the people from Kerry, but I'm going to say Jakuyu e Doba Bachenya to any of our Ukrainian listeners. Thanks for joining. Goodbye and good night.